Hi there. My name is Sarah Bugamolny. I'm the social media and marketing strategist for Jewfolk's social media consulting and coaching arm, Folk Media. I'm also the host of Leader Folk, a project of the Jewfolk Podcast Network, in which I interview a Jewish leader with a marginalized gender identity each week to explore Jewish leadership and communal innovation across the United States and beyond. In honor of Jaycation, I'm excited to bring you on a little journey to one of my favorite getaways, which is the theater. In my non-Jew folk life, I'm a professional director, actor, and theater educator, which is why I'm so excited to be sitting here a couple of states away, but with in spirit my friend Avi Aharoni, the playwright and star of Minnesota Jewish Theater's newest virtual play, Operation Immigration, which opens again virtually tomorrow evening. Welcome, Avi.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you. It's a great introduction.
Thanks so much for being here. Why don't you give us, Avi, just a little bio, a little introduction to yourself?
Oh man. Avi Aharoni. I am originally a Twin Cities native. Um, I grew up in the St. Louis Park JCC. I started. That's where I started doing theater when I was 12, and then started branching out. Doing theater professionally around 16, 17, and then after working for a couple of years, I took a couple of years off and traveled the world, and then I decided to come back and pursue it a little bit harder because the Twin Cities theater community is incredible, and I wanted to be here to really focus on the art, and so my art and career have taken me to this one-man show. It's insane. It's insane. I hope that was a good introduction.
Yeah, that was perfect. I am going to take a moment to show everybody, we have a trailer available for your show. So we're
Cool.
just gonna take a minute, share the trailer, and then we have some questions and conversations coming up right after that.
Now, I can't speak for all Jews. I mean, that's why we have Jeff Goldblum. But I know for me, my insecurities fall between the cracks of this is how I feel and this is how I'm viewed. And oftentimes, this is how I feel is influenced by this is how I'm viewed and vice versa. And trust me, I mean, there's a lot of insecurities. But in order to understand my own identity, I had to find out where it all began. I had to learn about my immigrant father and the life he had before I knew him. This is our story.
Great. So congratulations on opening your show virtually tomorrow, Avi. Um, as everybody could hear in that clip, Operation Immigration is a really personal, homegrown story. The first iteration premiered last summer at the Minnesota Fringe Festival and took home the Golden Lanyard Award. And this year it's back. It's expanded. It's being produced by the Minnesota Jewish Theater. And thank you to COVID, it's filmed and will be available all across the world to stream from the comfort of our own homes. So, Avi, what was the original impetus to explore your father's history and how did you decide to turn it into a play?
Oh, good question. I think it was, I mean, like as a kid, you don't really understand that your parents had lives before you were born. So when I'd hear bits and pieces of the life that he led and the life that he had, it doesn't ever register. So it really wasn't until I was like an adult, and then really after he passed away that I heard more and more stories coming out, and then it was just crazy interesting. And having the theater background, I'm like, God, this story's so good. So it was really a couple years of being like, I wonder if there's something I can do with it. Now, whatever, or oh, maybe I could do this, but now, whatever. And I think about 2 years ago, I was visiting Israel, and stories started pouring out again about my dad and the family life, and in life in Iran and life in Israel in the 50s. And I just grabbed I always try to have a notebook next to me or by me or in my backpack. So I just grabbed my notebook and just started writing everything down, and really like linearly. And when I came back from Israel on that trip, I just started writing it, transposing it from my notebook into like a story, not knowing what it would be. And it ultimately like, uh, I think, I mean, not knowing what it would be. I think I knew that I wanted to do a show with it. Whether it was a one-man show, I had no idea. But because I'm such a big fan of one-man shows and one-person shows, like that we can, uh, that I just thought this could be the challenge. To write and do a one-person show was a terrifying endeavor. And I think because it scared me, I was like, all right, I got to do it then.
I would imagine that one of the scary things of doing a one-person show is that typically when you've been performing, you are always playing a character. And acting is such a vulnerable experience. So, how does playing yourself on stage or being yourself on stage compare? And would you say that you're playing yourself in Operation Immigration, or are you playing a character version of yourself?
Oh my God, I think I you're right. Acting itself is very vulnerable, but I never realized how much before this show I relied on when I would build a character, like whether from the inside out or outward in or bottom up. Um, a lot of times I'll build a character with like, um, how does this person walk? How do they talk? How do they present themselves? And then I find a character. And I never realized until this, I'm like, wow, I rely on that just so I can have a disconnect, because being myself is terrifying. And my director Robert really just, he would not let me act it. He wouldn't let me perform it. It was weeks of just being like, stop this, that sounded fake, just say it, just do it. And so it was really much more vulnerable. And I think I have to play myself in this, and I hope it comes off that way, that I'm not playing a character of myself, but I'm legitimately just being who I am, because I didn't have a say in that.
When you closed the show last year, did you have any idea that it would live on beyond the Fringe Festival? Was there still more to the story that you were itching to tell?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think Robert and I, my director and I, we knew the story wasn't finished. We knew the show wasn't finished. We knew that the Fringe was, um, it was unfinished, and that's kind of what the beauty of a Fringe festival is. It can be unfinished, because it's there to workshop, and get things in front of audiences and tweak. And so we knew that. We didn't necessarily know it would come back in the form of a film. Uh, but after the festival, Barbara Brooks, our artistic director, because we've both worked extensively with the Minnesota Jewish Theater, we knew there was interest in it. But I personally was just trying not to get my hopes up, because who knew? And then the pandemic hit, and then we really didn't have any clue what would happen. And luckily, Barbara was still very interested in producing it. So we just had to figure out a new vehicle for the show, which thankfully, like, I was proud of the Fringe show, but I knew it wasn't done, and I'm glad that I hope it feels more done. Maybe not finished, because when is anything ever finished artistically? But I'm really proud of what it's turned into from last summer.
When you did the play live at Fringe last year, you were in control of the whole experience. You were the producer, you were the playwright, you were the person on stage telling and embodying the story. So even though you did have a director, at the end of the day, it's your words and it's you on a stage. And this time around, you had to relinquish some of that control to other creative collaborators. And I think that it wasn't until this afternoon that you finally got to see the finished product that audiences
watched it. I just watched it. Yeah.
What was that experience like of getting to see your work reflected back at you for the first time? Did anything surprise you?
Oh, wow. I'm still processing it. I mean, it still feels, the experience of watching it is just still raw because it was literally like 2 hours ago that I watched it. Um, what surprised me, in a lot of ways, I I am so glad I wasn't part of the editing process. I'm so glad, like, I had the months of adapting and writing and reworking and tweaking with the help of my director and the help of the dramaturg, who's an amazing dramaturg, Joe Holcomb.
Wait,
Um,
really quick for people who might not know what a dramaturg is, can you explain her role?
oh yeah, the joke about dramaturgs is that you can get 200 dramaturgs in a room and all give you a different answer of what they do in a rehearsal room. But Joe is very much like, she's a genius in history, about history and historical context. So anytime, so like for this show specifically, I mean, there's a lot of, because it goes through a lot of historical things in especially the Middle Eastern history. She was there to very much like back it up or do the research, send me articles, send me things to read, and then it was my responsibility to read and then kind of take the information and try to make it accessible in a performance. So that was, she was very, I mean, she's invaluable at her the role of a dramaturg, because people who are history buffs, and I'm definitely not one, could see a show and be like, well, that's wrong, that's wrong, and so it's really helpful to have somebody like that in a rehearsal room when you're dealing with that sort of context. So I hope that answers your question.
Totally. I'm sorry I interrupted though. I don't know if I knocked you off track.
No, I don't, what was I saying? Tweaking. Oh, yes. So it was nice for me to be like, to film it. We filmed over 2.5 days, 3 days, and then to walk away. And I've had these last 3 weeks to just like regroup, because I think the months of writing and tweaking and working it, and then the week, 4 days of rehearsal and 3 days of filming was very stressful. So it was very good to just be able to unwind before I saw it. But you're right. It's a very scary thing to take like your baby and then just put it in the hands of someone else. And that's what it was. But luckily, I mean, the team, our cinematographer, the sound designer, our PA, Robert, the director, I mean, they're all incredible at what they do, like top, like incredible. So I wasn't worried about what their job. It was just it's a vulnerable thing to create something and pass it off. You know?
So you've done other shows, at least one other show with the Minnesota Jewish Theater. What's the value to you of making Jewish theater or being able to create in a specifically Jewish space? And does it differ from making theater in other spaces?
Oh, good question. I haven't been asked that one. Yes. There's a couple questions in that question.
Yeah.
Um, the value of the Jewish theater, I'll just, for the company specifically, is like I've been lucky enough, like knock on wood, to have worked with a lot of theater companies in town. But it really wasn't until I worked at the Jewish theater that I felt home. Like I felt like I was entering somebody's home in the company. Like the board members, the audience, everybody's so dedicated, and there's, that beautiful Jewish sense of community that we have as Jews, that like you feel that in the theater community, in the theater company. And so I really like felt embraced by the Minnesota Jewish theater people. So that was really incredible, unlike other theater companies I've worked for. And I think it's, as a Jewish person in the arts, especially in the Midwest arts, and my show touches on this. It's like, where does the Jewish identity play into who I am as a Jewish person in this community? And I think that, the Jewish theater really, it gave me a sense of, oh, this art, like, I think being a Jew is to ask questions and challenge and like really, make people rethink and reframe previously conceived notions. And the Jewish theater encapsulates that. They don't always choose like Fiddler, right? But they'll choose shows that have Jewish aspects to it, Jewish characters, but are really gritty and really like you walk away being like, oh my God, I got a pit in my stomach. What did I just, that was incredible. That type of experience. And again, that's different than a lot of theater companies, because theater companies want to, not all obviously, but I think theater companies want to get the best selling show instead of having an audience walk away questioning and talking. Does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Long answer, I guess.
No, that's great. A little bit earlier, you mentioned being a big fan of one-person shows and being kind of inspired by that format. So, in addition to being inspired by your family history and your dad's journey, what else played into the inspiration for Operation Immigration?
uh, um, Truthfully, this is an exclusive information. Uh, so yes, I've been a fan of one person shows, but I'm specifically like stand-up comedy has always been like a great love of mine. Not that I consider myself a stand-up comedian, but I love the art form. And I especially love comedians who take it to another level or blend the genre. And I think that's what I was attempting to do. So like really the spark of this show, me being like, yes, I'm doing this, that final spark was John Leguizamo's one-man show on Netflix. He did a Broadway one-man show, Latin History for Morons. So I watched that and I'm like, cool, that's it. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to work on. So, and then obviously like Hannah Gadsby's one person shows, Mike Birbiglia's one person shows, and Bo Burnham's. The four of them really like, with John Leguizamo, his was very historical and very kind of TED talky, which I really appreciated. And Hannah Gadsby, I love her vulnerability and her rawness. Mike Birbiglia is an incredible storyteller, and the way he weaves a story in and out of anecdotes and not with jokes. And then Bo Burnham, his ability to really surprise and give you unexpected turns. And so I kind of drew a little from everybody, because those were what that's really kind of what I loved about how they took their art form and blurred it with something else.
The show is such a personal exploration of your relationship with your father and his journey as an immigrant. And I'm curious, has your family been supportive of you exploring this story so publicly?
I was really worried about that. I don't know. I mean, yes, in a nutshell, I feel like I have gotten no bad feedback. Um, my mom saw it in the Fringe, and kind of she was just bawling. I was just holding her outside the theater on the sidewalk afterwards, like, and so and even my brother kind of said to me afterwards, he's like, I thought you were gonna do something lame, but like that was like a real show. So I didn't and even my family in Israel, I didn't purposely, I didn't let them in on the extent of what I was doing. They all knew like, oh, he's doing a thing, he's doing a cute thing, or he's doing a show. But the amount of work and time and dedication that I don't think my mom and brother knew that going in last summer. And I don't think my family in Israel, my family abroad, necessarily knows what they're getting into with the film, because they didn't get a chance to see it. So all I can do is hope that I did them justice, because some of them are the ones who lived it, and it feels like a lot of weight to take that on myself, And I'm not worried. But it is something I've definitely thought about.
So I'm going to turn the conversation a little bit more toward theater in general. We're 7 months into the pandemic. Broadway is officially closed through May of next year. How are you feeling as an artist right now? Are you able to plan ahead for the future while the industry is on hold?
Oh, oh, I I don't know how to no. No, I mean, I'm not alone. Like you being a theater professional that you are, it's terrifying. It's terrifying to like commit so much of your life and so much time and love um, to a livelihood that is already difficult and already uncertain and already unstable to to now where we life in general is uncertain and unstable and scary, so that only accentuates the theater because we're going to be the last, probably the last thing to come back, real theater, real audience gathering. And it's terrifying. It's scary, and it's, not, I mean, personally, but also on a bigger scale of like what theaters are will survive, you know Minneapolis St. Paul is the third best theater community in the country. So if we lose a bunch, what does that say about the rest of the market, especially like you said, Broadway, perfect example. Broadway is also for profit. It's commercial, which is in one sense fine because they will probably survive, but there's thousands of companies around the country probably that are not commercial. They're not for profit, So it's a terrifying time, I think, as a theater performer, as you, I'm sure, can attest to.
I can. Has living through the past 7 months clarified or sharpened your idea of the kinds of art that you want to be creating or the kinds of projects that you want to embark on when we can get back to it?
I think so. I mean, I think um it's given me more of a drive to create my own stuff. As an actor, you're so dependent on other people for work. You depend, like, if will I get cast, that's someone else's decision. Can I get an audition, that's someone else's decision. So I think it's clarified for me to like really, I mean, Operation Immigration also, but like, I've done other projects in the last 7 months just for fun little dumb things where I'm like, yeah, I think artists, creators, need to create. They need to make the art. Like that's what we know. And without it, who it sounds big. I'm not trying to be the big, but like without it, who are we? What are we? And I think that's something a lot of us are wrestling with. I'm sure you can. Do you feel that too? Like,
Yeah, I think that being disconnected from that community that we rely on so frequently and being disconnected from that outlet, which is a way to process so much of the world around us, that is a huge hole in my life right now.
yeah, yeah, and it makes you question everything. And so, I think the one silver lining, if there is one, is that creatives are going to find creative ways to create an outlet. That I should quote that somewhere. But I think
Right
you,
here.
right here, you heard it here first. Heard it first, whatever. But and I think that's where Operation Immigration comes from. I think that's where a lot of like the companies that are doing work around the country are really finding ways to do the work. And so we just have to be more creative now, and that's really hard. It's really hard to take what we know and try to make it more creative, you know?
Yeah, luckily limitations breed lots of creativity, and we're seeing it now with your show, with lots of other things. So thank you, Avi, for being here, for participating in this Jaycation, for
Thank
kind of
you. Thanks for having me.
reminding us of what an escape theater can be. And for those of you who want to continue your escape into Operation Immigration, that runs at the Minnesota Jewish Theater's website. That's where you can find all the ticket information. The show opens tomorrow, October 17th, and runs through October 25th. This is not an on-demand streaming thing. There are specific show times. So when you go to the website and you buy a ticket, this is not something you can just turn on anytime. So it's extra special to have an appointment to go see theater just like we would in real life. I love that they're doing it this way. And just thank you again, Avi.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for having me. This was really great. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Congratulations.